Rex Carter woke up to the sound of a flamingo honking directly into his face. This, by itself, wasn't entirely unusual. Rex had lived with a lot of regret in his life, and one of those regrets was agreeing to take care of Fernando, an unhinged, highly intelligent flamingo that had followed him home from a derelict zoo years ago. What was unusual, however, was that Fernando was wearing his military beret. "Gimme that," Rex grumbled, snatching the hat off Fernando's head. The bird gave him an unnervingly long stare, unblinking, before flapping his wings and perching. Atop the dresser like an ominous pink gargoyle, Rex rubbed his temples. Today was going to be a terrible day. He was, after all, the commander of Earth's Defense HQ, a job that sounded way more impressive than it actually was. Mostly, it consisted of yelling at people, dealing with intergalactic paperwork, and ensuring Earth wasn't obliterated by one of the many alien species that viewed humanity as a particularly annoying infestation. Today, the worst of them all had arrived in the solar system, the Zargothian Dominion, an empire so bureaucratic that even their weapon systems required a 3-week approval process before firing. But they had numbers. They had weapons. They had technology that could reduce Earth to a pile of regret and Taco Bell wrappers in under an hour. And now Rex had to negotiate with them. Stumbling out of his apartment and into the waiting government transport, he sighed. "How bad is it, Lieutenant?" Jake Miller, his right-hand headache, turned in his seat. "Well, sir, the Zargothians have positioned their fleet in low orbit, and they've sent a message demanding our unconditional surrender." Rex groaned. "And what's the catch?" Jake grinned. "Oh, it's great. Their fleet AI intercepted our satellite feeds and got stuck in an endless loop, watching cat videos and listening to 1980s power ballads. They think this is some kind of psychological warfare." Dr. Ivy Clark, their top scientist and general, agent of chaos, cackled from the back seat. "They literally sent a transmission asking if 'Don't Stop Believin' is an anthem of resistance." I told them yes. Rex pinched the bridge of his nose. "We're all going to die." "Eh," Ivy shrugged. "Maybe." By the time they arrived at Earth Defense HQ, things had somehow gotten even worse. Fernando had escaped his carrier and was now strutting through the command center like he owned the place, pecking at buttons, flapping at screens, and most concerningly, sitting directly on top of the emergency override console. Jake frowned. Should he be doing that? "No," Rex said, "absolutely not." But before anyone could move Fernando, the giant view screen crackled to life. High Administrator Grolic of the Zargothians appeared, looking as if someone had just informed him his entire species had been replaced by malfunctioning Roombas. "Humans," Grolic said, his voice full of bureaucratic exhaustion, "we demand your surrender." Before Rex could respond, Fernando honked loudly. The sound was transmitted. Across the entire Zargothian fleet, there was silence. Then Grolic blinked. "What was that?" Fernando honked again. A long, drawn-out, soul-piercing honk that seemed to bypass all logic and strike directly at the core of one's sanity. Grolic visibly recoiled. "What manner of entity is this?" Ivy, never one to pass up an opportunity, leaned forward. "This," she said dramatically, "is our supreme leader, the avian oracle of doom." Fernando flapped his wings once, majestically, before staring directly into the camera. It was an unsettling stare, the kind of stare that suggested he knew all of Grolic's secrets, that he had seen the end of the universe and found it mildly amusing, that he would eat Grolic's cereal and leave the box empty just to watch the world burn. Grolic looked horrified. You are led by this creature?" Rex, realizing an opportunity when he saw one, nodded solemnly. "Indeed, and he is not pleased." Fernando took this moment to hop onto the console and peck at a random set of buttons. The Earth Defense HQ alarms blared, lights flickered, and somehow the Zargothian fleet's primary systems began shutting down one by one. "Sir!" A panicked Zargothian officer's voice crackled through the transmission. "Their supreme entity has launched an EMP attack on our fleet." Grolik's face paled to the color of expired mayonnaise. "This is unexpected." Fernando honked once more. The transmission ended abruptly. Rex turned to Ivy. "Tell me that didn't actually happen." She grinned. "Oh, it happened. Fernando just hacked the entire Zargothian fleet by accident." Jake's mouth hung open. "We have an intergalactic warlord flamingo." Fernando fluffed his feathers, clearly pleased with himself. Rex sat down, rubbing his temples. "I need coffee." Ivy patted his shoulder. "And I need to see how far we can take this. Jake, send a message to the Zargothians. Tell them our supreme entity demands tribute." Jake grinned. "I'm thinking 3 tons of bird seed and a golden perch." Rex sighed. "This is going to spiral out of control, isn't it?" Ivy beamed. "Oh, absolutely." Rex Carter was no stranger to disaster, but he had never in his life expected to be part of a flamingo-led military coup against an intergalactic empire. And yet, here he was, sipping coffee in the Earth Defense HQ, watching as an entire alien fleet lost their collective minds over a pink bird that occasionally honked into their communication systems. The morning briefing was not helping his headache. "All right," he grumbled, rubbing his eyes. "Somebody explain to me, slowly, how in the name of all things sane, we've gone from about to be conquered to somehow being worshipped as a planet of flamingo-commanded warlords." Ivy grinned and spun around in her chair. "Absolutely. Loving this. Simple. Fernando hacked their fleet by accident. Their AI still hasn't recovered, and now they're convinced he's some kind of god king. Oh, and they just sent over their first tribute." Rex blinked. "What?" Jake burst through the door, holding up a datapad. "You are not gonna believe this. The Zargothians just sent us 42 metric tons of high-grade birdseed and an actual golden throne for the flamingo." Rex stared at him. "That's not a joke." "Oh, it gets better," Ivy said, pulling up a new transmission. The screen flickered, revealing High Administrator Galactic. He looked worse. His usual composed demeanor was gone. His uniform slightly disheveled, his eye twitching as if he had spent the night questioning every decision he had ever made. Galactic took a deep breath. "Supreme entity of Earth, the Zargothian Dominion humbly seeks an audience with your exalted leader." Rex felt something deep in his soul break. This isn't happening. Before he could stop it, Ivy reached over and activated the room's main camera. The Zargothians would now have a direct feed of Earth's supposed supreme entity, which meant that, right on cue, Fernando flapped up onto the command table, honked loudly, and stared into the transmission feed with the intensity of 1,000 imploding stars. Galactic recoiled as if struck. The Zargothian officers behind him whispered nervously to one another. "The honk," one muttered. "It pierces my soul." Jake, sensing an opportunity, decided to go all in. He bowed dramatically toward Fernando. "O great and mighty Avian, Oracle of Doom, the Zargothians seek your guidance." Fernando responded by tilting his head, extending his long, spindly neck toward the screen, and then, without warning, violently pecking the emergency override button. Every single one of the Zargothian ships in orbit suddenly shut down. The command room erupted into chaos. Galactic gasped audibly. The other Zargothians fell into panic, their screens flashing with warning alerts. "The supreme entity wields a power beyond comprehension," one of them shrieked. Rex slammed his head against the table. "I hate everything." Ivy, meanwhile, was laughing so hard she had to clutch her stomach. "I don't think you understand the level of psychological warfare we're dealing with here. They think he's omnipotent." Jake grinned. "Yeah, and they're not entirely wrong." Galactic, now pale as a ghost, gulped. We seek only to serve the will of the supreme entity. Please, tell us what it desires." Fernando, still standing on the command table, let out an impressively long honk. Then, for reasons unknown to mankind or science, he turned around and began aggressively kicking over random objects, coffee cups, data pads, an entire laptop, before calmly resuming his unblinking stare. Grolic watched this unfold with the expression of a man losing his grip on reality. The supreme entity decrees destruction. Ivy, unable to resist, nodded solemnly. Indeed, the supreme entity demands the downfall of order, the collapse of structure, the rise of chaos. Grolic twitched. But the Zargothian dominion thrives on order. Bureaucracy is the foundation of our civilization. How can we... Fernando flapped his wings once, and just like that, every single Zargothian officer on screen dropped to their knees. It is as the prophecy foretold, one whispered. The entity of chaos will undo the rigid structure of our civilization. Grolic, now visibly sweating, swallowed hard. We shall comply. Rex choked on his coffee. Wait, what? But it was already too late. The Zargothians had, in their highly bureaucratic way, begun the most absurd coup in history. Reports were already coming in from their fleet. Compliance officers resigning in disgrace, forms being destroyed en masse, entire departments abandoning their posts to embrace the new, flamingo-ordained philosophy of disorder. Jake scrolled through the incoming messages. Holy crap, they're actually dismantling their own government. Ivy shook her head in admiration. This is possibly the greatest moment in military history. Fernando, satisfied with his work, fluffed his feathers and strutted off the table as if he had planned the whole thing. Rex groaned. So let me get this straight. We have by sheer accident turned an entire alien empire into a flamingo-worshipping cult of anarchy? Jake gave a thumbs up. Yup. By doing literally nothing? Ivy smirked. Oh no, we did plenty. We introduced them to Fernando. Rex buried his face in his hands. I swear, if this gets any worse... An alert blared through the room. A new transmission was coming in, this time from what looked like a faction of Zargothians, wearing mismatched armor and wielding what could only be described as highly impractical laser swords. A gruff, heavily scarred Zargothian appeared on screen. His eye burned with the intensity of someone who had spent too long writing expense reports and had finally snapped. I am Commander Vorek, he declared. We are the Zargothian rebellion. We will not allow the collapse of our great civilization. Rex groaned. Oh great, now there's a rebellion, Jake snickered. And they're rebelling against their own people, who are rebelling against themselves. Ivy smirked. So what do we do? Rex exhaled slowly. What we always do. We wing it. Jake patted Fernando's head. You ready, buddy? Fernando honked. Vorek twitched. That sound. I can feel it in my bones. The screen cut out. Ivy grinned. Oh, this is going to be fun. The universe had officially lost its collective mind. Rex Carter sat in the Earth Defense HQ, watching as an entire alien empire descended into absolute madness, all because of one particularly erratic flamingo. What had started as an impending planetary annihilation had somehow spiraled into a full-blown civil war among the Zargothians, with one faction embracing the divine teachings of Fernando the Flamingo, chaos, destruction, and the occasional honk, while the other clung desperately to their bureaucratic traditions, determined to restore order and file the proper paperwork for planetary subjugation. And now, to make matters worse, both sides were demanding Earth's intervention. This is not happening, Rex muttered, rubbing his temples as he stared at the latest transmission. On one side of the screen was High Administrator Grolic, looking about 3 honks away from a nervous breakdown. His formerly pristine uniform was now slightly wrinkled, and the bags under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept in at least 3. In planetary rotations, the supreme entity has spoken, Grolic declared with a zeal that made Rex deeply uncomfortable. We, the faithful, have abandoned the shackles of bureaucracy and now embrace the way of... He swallowed hard, as if forcing the words out physically pained him. The way of spontaneous action, Jake snorted. So, basically, they've gone full bird cult. Grolic nodded solemnly. Yes, we now recognize the futility of excessive regulations and endless forms. We have purged the Compliance Division, set fire to the Department of Galactic Trade Sanctions, and as we speak, our greatest bureaucratic strongholds are falling. He looked into the camera, his eye twitching. But the rebels refused to accept the Supreme Entity's decree. They still cling to their forms, their structured protocols, their documented procedures. Ivy leaned forward, grinning. And you want Fernando to fix it? Grolic nodded again. We need his wisdom, his honk. Jake turned to Rex. So let me get this straight. They're asking us to send a flamingo to settle a civil war. Rex pinched the bridge of his nose. I need stronger coffee. But before he could process this lunacy, another alert chimed in. A second transmission appeared, this time from Commander Vorek, leader of the Zargothian rebellion. Vorek looked rough. His armor was dented, his face bruised, and he spoke with the intensity of a man who had been up all night fighting a war he never expected to have against his own former co-workers. Humans, he growled. Your so-called supreme entity has corrupted my people with its unhinged madness. Entire offices are now operating without paperwork. Ships are launching without proper clearance. A fleet commander was just promoted without a 10-year review process. He gripped the edges of his desk as if trying to physically hold his world together. This must end. Jake scratched his head. So wait, you're mad because things are moving faster? Yes, Vorek snapped. Without rules there is only anarchy. We refuse to allow our society to fall into madness. And if Earth is truly under the thrall of this thing, he narrowed his eyes, then you are our enemy. Rex sighed, sipping his coffee as he weighed his options. So, let me sum this up. One faction wants us to send Fernando into space so he can lead them to victory in the name of chaotic enlightenment. Correct, Ivy said. And the other faction is threatening war against us because they believe flamingo-based governance is a galactic threat? Correct again, Jake said. Rex exhaled. Why do I have this job? Ivy grinned. Because you're terrible at delegating. As if sensing the dramatic tension, Fernando flapped onto the table, knocking over a half-full coffee cup, and then fixed his unblinking gaze on the screen. The Zargothians, both rebel and loyalist alike, audibly gasped. The entity has arrived, Grolic whispered in reverence. Vorek recoiled as if physically struck by Fernando's gaze. That stare! I can feel it burrowing into my soul. Fernando did not blink. Fernando never blinked. The silence stretched on for a painfully long time. Then, without breaking eye contact, Fernando lifted one leg. The Zargothians collectively lost it. It's a sign, one of Grolic's officers cried. He is balancing the forces of chaos and order. Vorek's eye twitched. No, no, this is insanity. You're all insane. That is a bird, a pink bird. You are rewriting the foundation of our civilization because a bird stood on one leg, Fernando honked. Loudly, Grolic gasped. The entity speaks. Vorek turned to Rex, his expression somewhere between fury and exhaustion. Do you know what I had to do to get this rank? 15 years of documentation, a mountain of approvals. And now you expect me to bow before a noodle-legged sky demon because it occasionally honks? Rex sighed. Yeah, pretty much. Vorek inhaled sharply, his fists clenching. You leave me no choice. If Earth stands with this creature, then the rebellion will wipe you out. The screen cut out. Jake let out a low whistle. Wow, so, I guess we're at war now? Ivy tapped her chin. Well, technically we were already kind of at war with them. Then we weren't. Then we were again. Now we're at war because of a flamingo. Rex buried his face in his hands. I swear I used to be a respectable military commander. Jake laughed. Did you, though? Ivy was already pulling up the orbital fleet map. So, question, do we actually fight back, or do we just let Fernando keep messing with their heads? Rex thought about that for a long moment. Then he turned to Fernando. Fernando stared, and Rex knew. Oh no, he muttered. I can feel it. He's got a plan. Fernando strutted over to the central control panel. Before anyone could stop him, he pecked at the touchscreen. The Earth Defense HQ alarms blared again. Jake yelped. What did he do? Ivy checked the redoubt and gasped. He just hacked the entire Zagothian fleet again. Rex groaned. How does he keep doing that? He's a bird. Grolik's panicked voice came through the speakers. O mighty supreme entity, what have you decreed? Fernando flapped his wings, and suddenly every Zagothian ship turned on each other. Jake's mouth dropped. Oh my God, he just reversed their targeting systems. They're shooting themselves. Ivy burst out laughing. This is the single dumbest military victory in history. Rex collapsed into his chair. So we're winning. Oh, we're doing more than winning, Ivy said. We just broke an entire alien empire by accident. Jake grinned. Long live Supreme Commander. Fernando honked, triumphant. The war was over before it even began. The war, if it could even be called that, had ended in less time than it took to microwave a burrito. Rex Carter sat in the Earth Defense HQ Command Center, staring blankly at the screens in front of him. The Zagothian fleet, once a symbol of intergalactic efficiency, order, and terrifying bureaucracy, was now in absolute disarray. Ships were spinning aimlessly in orbit, rebel and loyalist forces firing at each other, often missing completely because their targeting systems had been scrambled beyond all recognition. And at the center of it all, the cause of their galactic implosion, stood Fernando the Flamingo, unblinking, one leg raised, basking in the glow of total chaos. Jake let out a low whistle. So, are we just not going to talk about how a flamingo just single-handedly obliterated the military and political structure of an advanced alien species? Ivy, still wiping away tears of laughter, held up a shaky hand. I mean, in their defense, it's not like they could have prepared for this. There's no what to do if a noodlebird takes over your government section in their training. Manuals. Rex exhaled sharply and rubbed his temples. Somebody bring me a drink, something strong. I need to process the fact that we just survived an alien invasion because of a flamingo. A communication request flashed on the main screen. High Administrator Grolik appeared, looking like a broken man. His once impeccable uniform was a mess, his hair disheveled, and his eyes filled with the unmistakable look of someone who had lost everything to a force beyond comprehension. Rex hesitated, then answered the call. Administrator Grolik, you, don't look great. Grolik exhaled slowly, his voice shaking. I have come to a decision. Rex, Jake, and Ivy all exchanged nervous glances. Grolik continued. The Zagothian Dominion has stood for millennia. We have conquered star systems, imposed order upon the chaos of the universe, and meticulously documented every transaction, declaration, and planetary acquisition. We believed ourselves to be the ultimate force of structure. He let out a broken laugh. But we were fools. Ivy, smirking, leaned forward. Because of one bird. Grolik's eye twitched. Because of the bird, the avian oracle of doom, the supreme entity of chaos. He shuddered. There is no strategy against such madness. No logic that can counter his unpredictability. He has undone us not with force, not with firepower, but with pure, incomprehensible nonsense. Jake pumped a fist in the air. Damn right. Rex sighed. So what now? Grolik straightened his back, took a deep breath, and did what no Zagothian leader had ever done before. He surrendered. The Zargothian dominion submits to the will of the supreme entity. He bowed his head. We offer ourselves as his humble followers. We will dismantle our systems of rigid control. We will embrace the teachings of chaos. We will flock to his wisdom. Ivy snorted. I can't believe it. We won, and we didn't even fire a single shot. Rex held up a finger. That is not the impressive part. The impressive part is that we won because a flamingo gave them an existential crisis. Fernando, as if sensing the gravity of the moment, flapped his wings once and honked. The sound was transmitted across the entire Zargothian fleet. Grolic trembled. It is done. There was a long, awkward silence. Jake turned to Rex. So, what do we do with an entire alien civilization that now worships a flamingo? Rex thought about it for a long moment. I have no idea. Ivy grinned. Well, first things first, I'm getting Fernando a little cape. He's basically a god now. Grolic's image flickered again, this time showing massive processions of Zargothians kneeling before enormous holograms of Fernando's unblinking face. Statues were already being erected. One particularly large monument on Zargoth Prime depicted him standing triumphantly over a pile of shredded bureaucratic documents. Jake's eyes widened. Are they seriously rewriting their entire civilization? Around him, Grolic nodded gravely. It is the only way forward. The old ways have failed. From this day forth, we shall be known as the Flamingocracy. Rex choked on his coffee. The what? The Flamingocracy, Grolic repeated with the solemnity of a man accepting his fate. The Dominion is no more. We shall embrace spontaneity, randomness, and the divine wisdom of the avian oracle. We shall live as he does, free, without constraint, unburdened by over-regulation. Ivy clapped. I love this for them. Jake was nearly in tears, laughing. Oh my God! We didn't just defeat them, we converted them. Rex rubbed his temples. I need a vacation. A new alert flashed across the screen. Grolic, now visibly anxious, cleared his throat. We do have one concern. Rex groaned. Of course you do. Grolic hesitated before finally saying, Commander Vorek and the remaining loyalists have fled into deep space. They refuse to accept the teachings of the supreme entity. They seek revenge. Ivy sighed dramatically. Oh no, the paperwork guys are coming back for us. Grolic's expression darkened. Vorek has vowed to rebuild the old Dominion. To restore order, he will return with reinforcements. He will seek to destroy Earth and its flamingo ruler. Jake tilted his head. Okay, but why? His entire culture just collapsed, all because of a single bird. Shouldn't he just cut his losses and retire somewhere peaceful? Grolic's face was grim. Because he is not like the rest of us. He has spent too long within the bureaucracy. He cannot let go. He is the last remnant of true Zargothian order. And that makes him the most dangerous enemy of all. Rex groaned. Perfect. Just perfect. We win an intergalactic war without firing a shot, and now we have to deal with a vengeful space bureaucrat hell-bent on wiping us out. Ivy leaned back, arms crossed, smirking. Well, we do have one thing he doesn't, Jake grinned. An intergalactic flamingo warlord? Fernando let out a long, unholy honk. Grolic, hearing it, bowed deeply. We are ready to serve. Whatever. The supreme entity commands, we shall do. Rex sighed. I can't believe I'm saying this, but prepare the fleet. Jake clapped his hands together. Are we actually doing this? Rex exhaled. We don't have a choice. If Vorek comes back, we need to be ready, and that means... He took a deep, reluctant breath, mentally preparing himself for the most absurd order he had ever given. In his entire career, we are going to war under the banner of a flamingo, Ivy grinned. Long live the Flamingocracy, Jake saluted. Long live Supreme Commander Fernando. Fernando flapped his wings. The war wasn't over.